They put my picture in the newsletter. Not a nice photo. A grainy snapshot of a damp ring near my driveway, circled in angry red ink. The headline read, "Wasteful Property, Frank Dalton." Before I start, hit like, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you enjoy real homeowner stories. They didn't write it as a question. They wrote it as a sentence, and right below it, a fine, $150 per month until corrected. I read that line 3 times. Then I folded the newsletter and walked to the curb, boots on wet concrete, feeling every drop like an accusation. I knew it wasn't mine, but I also knew the sort of men who would blame an old inspector without asking a single question. Martin Hale, HOA president, was the kind of man who'd wear a tie to take out the trash. He stood under the lamppost the next morning with his deputy. Tom Ellis, both wearing smug faces like they'd won a prize. "You should have fixed it, Frank," Martin said, voice sharp as a tax notice. "You're wasting the community's water," Tom added, shaking his head for the camera. I didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. I just smiled the way a man smiles when he's been given a puzzle. Because I'd spent 35 years as a city water inspector, and puzzles were my specialty. That night, while the neighborhood slept under the hum of sprinklers and pretense, I walked the curb with my flashlight and my notebook. The puddle had a smell, not fresh rain, not runoff. It was older. The smell of water forced through broken pipes long enough to collect secrets. I started quietly. Not by fighting, but by documenting. I logged every valve, every pressure reading, every hydrant along the block, and I watched the meters tick. My house dry, theirs spinning like roulette wheels. They wanted a fight. I wanted proof. Different weapons. 2 weeks later, I walked into the county water office with a stack of papers thick enough to matter. 46 pages. Pressure graphs, soil readings, time-stamped photos. The clerk directed me to an inspector named Ramirez, a man who still wore steel-toe boots and carried decency in his eyes. He flipped through the pages, frowned, and said, "We'll dig where your numbers say. If you're right, they'll be paying for a lot more than a leak." That was all I needed to hear. They dug under the curb 2 mornings later and found the truth buried, 6 feet down. A fractured 6-inch main, the HOA's line, cracked and leaking thousands of gallons beneath the street. The water hissed out, like a confession. By noon, the county had photos. By evening, the HOA had a violation notice the size of a billboard. Martin's perfect composure broke. He looked like a man watching his own mask melt. But that wasn't the end. That was just the first turn of the wrench. The county fined the HOA $18,000 for negligence, plus daily penalties until the repairs were done. They called emergency meetings, blamed contractors, blamed the weather, blamed everyone except themselves. But I wasn't after money. Money dries up. I wanted something that stayed wet. While reviewing county plans, I found a forgotten easement, a clause buried deep in zoning files, one that required a stormwater retention basin after any major line replacement in that district. Guess where that basin had to go? Directly on HOA property, right in front of Martin Hale's house. They could fix the pipe, but they couldn't change the law. 2 months later, the backhoes returned. They carved a shallow pit where Martin's prized flower beds used to bloom. The county called it an eco-restoration. Wetland. I called it karma with a water feature. The new basin stretched 20 feet across, lined with reeds, cattails, and the constant hum of mosquitoes. The county ordered it fenced and signed, with a small plaque reading, "Maintenance funded by the Hale Creek Homeowners Association for Environmental Remediation." Martin's perfect lawn was gone, replaced by a muddy monument to arrogance. Every month, the HOA wrote a $543 maintenance check, his signature at the bottom, his shame at the top. Neighbors walked by and read the plaque out loud. Some smiled, some laughed. Everyone remembered who caused it. Tom Ellis tried to rally the board to fight it, but the county wasn't interested. He resigned 2 months later. The new board couldn't remove the basin. Environmental law said it had to stay in perpetuity, forever. So now, the man who fined me for a wet driveway wakes up to a swamp buzzing outside his window, the permanent reminder of how his own rules drowned him. They printed a half apology in the newsletter, a single line, buried between gardening tips and a bake sale notice. But apologies. Don't erase memory. The basin did the talking. Children, throw pebbles in it now, birds, splash in it. And every time Martin sweeps his porch, he glances toward that murky puddle of consequence, pretending it's just part of the landscape. He knows better. He knows whose water it really was. I never gloated. Never spoke a word to the board again. I just make my coffee each morning, step outside, and listen to the sound of the reeds shifting in the wind. That sound means the system works, not the HOAs, but nature's. They tried to dry me out. Instead, I made them thirst forever. Before you go, tell me in the comments, was his revenge justified? Hit like if you enjoyed the story, and subscribe for more real homeowner tales where the quiet man wins in the end.